So check this out. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to create silver or chrome in your paintings. It's very simple. It's not as difficult as some people may think. With just a few colors, you can achieve similar results to this, if not better. Now, this will work for both oil and acrylics. However, keep in mind, they're two different mediums. Acrylics dry faster and acrylics also dry darker. So in order to achieve some good results with acrylics, you're going to have to get an extender, or as they call a retarder. Also, you have to keep in mind your color mixing because, as I said, it does dry darker. Now, there are a few things that will help you get really good results when trying to paint silver, chrome, or any reflective surface in general. The main thing is if you paint tight with a lot of detail. What that means is you like everything to be very smooth and formed together. It's always best to paint on a smooth surface to achieve the best results. I would even probably recommend this for loose painters. Yes, you can paint loose for your reflective surfaces. However, I think it always looks best when you go with the smooth look and you tighten things up. But everybody has their style. For me, I paint tight most of the times, and I like to have everything uniformed and smooth looking, depending on the subject, of course. Well, for this one, it has to be. Now, before we get into that video, I'm trying to grow this channel to 1,000 and beyond. I need you guys' help by hitting that like button, but most importantly, make sure you hit subscribe. Let's grow. Now let's get into that video. Let's talk about what we're gonna need and the process of things. So first off, I'm just gonna start off with my wash on here and my underpainting. Mainly, I like to work like that. I know some people, they just paint directly on to their surface and they just start painting their subject. However, I like to build my layers up. So I always start off with a wash, my underpainting, and then I get to the actual structure of the painting. So for the underpainting and the wash today, we're going to be using some titanium white, and we just need a little bit here. And we're also going to be using some ivory black, and that's just going to be our gray tones, which we can mix variations of gray tones with that. I'm just going to put a bit more there. Also, I'm going to be using some mineral spirits or paint thinner. And of course, because we're painting, you do need your brushes. Now, there is a color component to this because with silver or chrome surfaces, like any metal, it does reflect what's around it. However, I'm not going to be talking about that or adding that yet. Right now, we're just focusing on the values, and we're just focusing on the underpainting or the wash and the underpainting. I should know here that typically when I do my wash and my underpainting, I do use burnt umber. But this time around, I wanted to use just black and white so I can really show you guys how this all comes together and just change up the process a bit. Really, you can do an underpainting with any color, it doesn't matter. So here I'm just outlining, filling in some of the values according to my reference of where everything's going to be, the highlight, the shadows, the midtones, and as you can see, it's different grades of gray. All right, so let's talk about the colors I'll be using for my main layer before I get into my final layer. So ivory black, we're going to be using some titanium white. Then we're going to throw in some burnt umber, and we're actually going to mix the burnt umber with some ultramarine blue, and I'll explain that in a minute. Then I got some Portland gray. I don't use this too much, but I'm going to use it here and see what I can get. I'm going to deviate a bit from the reference, but I'm still going to put together that nice chrome look. So let me explain the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber. When you mix these two, you get a black, but if you put a bit more ultramarine blue, you get a cooler black. So now when we mix the titanium white into it, it will still give us that gray, but now it's gonna have a small tint of color, and that's gonna add a bit of dimension to this demonstration and to your chrome or silver surface, and it's gonna stand out even more. Another thing I should mention is that I have my stand oil mixed with my Gamsol. Some of you might have paint thinner, or you just might be using linseed oil, which is also completely fine. So now we get into the portion where we see everything come together. And here I'm just mixing some different grades of gray as I go along. So I'm filling in some of the lighter areas, some of the mid-tones, and I'm going to be filling in some of the darker areas. At this point here, I'm just laying everything out, building on my base. Now we're going to get into that part that I talked about with the cooler black. So I'm going to take a bit of this, or I should have took some white first, and add the white to it. And I'm not sure if it's really picking up on the camera, but you can see it has a bit of a blue tint. And that's what we want to add more dimension to our piece here. So then I'm just gonna subtly add it. You can see a bit of the blue coming through, but it's still gray. And that's what we want. This is gonna make it look more 3D. And again, this is gonna give it more depth. Another thing too, as you see the way I'm working, I'm going in the shape of the sphere here. I'm not going any other direction, deviating any sort of way. It's a circular motion to keep it nice and controlled and in form. So at this point, I fill in a bit more of those areas, get more of those shadows in there. And then I also go in with my blender brush, just smooth everything out, blend some of the areas that look too harsh and too rugged, because again, this is a smooth surface. Then I also take a mop brush and I go over it. Now, as I fill out the black, there's one thing you want to keep in mind. You want to have some in focus and some out of focus. So what I mean by that is you want to have some parts sharp and some parts more blurred. That will give it a more unified look. And again, it's good to have it looking more realistic than everything just being completely sharp. The reason for that is when you look at metallic surfaces, metals, nothing is 100% smooth and nothing is 100% sharp. It's a mix of both. So that's what we want to achieve here. But first, I just start off with mixing in my black. And typically I wait till everything is filled out, then I do my blending. But just for the sake of this demonstration, I take my blender brush. If you also have a makeup brush, that works good too. And I just smooth it out. I blend that into that one, but then also on the surface here. Smooth it out. And again, as I was saying before, I'm going in the shape of the object. I'm not going vertical, horizontal, anything like that. I'm going in circular motions only. The only deviation from that is this black part right here, because there's not really any form to it. And then this part, I'm gonna leave as is. I'm gonna clean it up a bit, but this curve here is gonna stay sharp, while everything here outside of it is gonna be a bit blurred. So there's the finished product with the highlights in it And the shadows, I just did a bit of a cast shadow at the bottom. But now let's go into actually applying it to a piece, and I'm going to show you guys how you can incorporate color into your silver or chrome. Now, many people paint different ways, right? So many people like to just paint their subject straight out on the canvas. However, I always like to draw out my subject first, tighten up the details, and then I go into the painting. So this is exactly the process here. And then of course, like I said before, go over it with the pen, make sure I don't lose any of those pencil marks. One thing I want to note here too is that whenever you're doing something that involves chrome or silver, you always want to be fluid with your drawing. So what I mean by that is when it comes to chrome and silver, it's reflecting off of a lot of surfaces. So you're not really going to get any sharp lines like say there. What you're more so going to get is more curved sort of lines. It's going to flow. So it's going to be something like that instead of something like this. For instance, you might get a little bit of this, but overall you're going to get more curved lines like here. And this is where going over your pencil work is helps out a lot, is a benefit, because this way you can make a lot of those corrections if you made those mistakes before. So I didn't spend too much time showing you guys this part of the process because it's not 100% necessary, but I just wanted to take you through what exactly I do to get to the point where I need to get. So let's get straight into the painting portion. Start things off with my watch. My palette is gonna be ivory black, titanium white, and then I got some ultramarine blue. Now the ultramarine blue is just for the areas where I have mark C. That means there's gonna be color there. So it's not gonna be true to the reference at this stage, but it's just a general idea of where I wanna place things and the shading or values, I should say. Same thing with the ivory black and titanium white. We're just gonna be doing gradual tones from light gray to dark gray and anything in between. This is just basically an outline and a guide as to where you're gonna place your colors. Now the letters that you see, that's just a guide that I use to place things. So LG for light gray, B for black, so on and so forth. Not necessary, but part of it. Now I'm gonna add the color in, so I still have a bit of gray in my brush. And I just took some of the mineral spirits and I'm just tinting it a bit. I don't want this to be super opaque. I just want it to be enough. So that's too opaque for me. So I'm just gonna take a bit more here. I just want it to be a placement of where are the main areas according to the reference where there's gonna be some color. So use a bit more blue there. There we go. So again, I'm not really filling in the areas. I'm just kind of giving a guide and a reference as to placement. And the paint thinner helps a lot where it can make it not so opaque so you can still see through where some of your lines are and where you're going to be putting everything. So now we get into this portion of the painting where I start adding in those layers. And with the color, I start working in the color again. So I go according to my reference where I add in the purple and then I'll add in some blues and other colors that are reflective. Again, whether it's silver, chrome, gold, whatever it is, it's gonna reflect the environment around it. So with this particular picture, with Silver Surfer being out in space, he's reflecting the colors that are around on his silver skin. It's the same thing when you guys paint silver, whatever the environment, that's what is going to be reflected on the surface. Makeup brush to blend things out. If you don't have a mop brush, it's a lot cheaper too. And here I'm just going in, filling in some highlights, to really bring things out. Once you put the highlights in, it makes a big difference as to how it looks. So there you have it, guys. Full on how to do silver and chrome. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and also make sure to check me out on Patreon where I have body art projects. See you on the next one. Peace.